This video is sponsored by Honey. In the world of late 90s, from the legendary team who brought you masterpieces such as Doom and Quake, one man dared to venture down the hallways of the id Software offices in Dallas, Texas. He knocked on the door of Rogue Entertainment, and a new legend was born. This man was none other than American McGee, the self-taught programmer and game designer who became a key member of the id Software team during the development of some of their most legendary series. But McGee had quite a rough and tumble life story, well before he and the rest of the id crew became international rock star designers who rubbed shoulders with David Lynch and Nine Inch Nails. I want to give a gentle warning here. Some of the bits I'm about to share are quite explicit description of child abuse. They do serve a purpose for the later discussions of the game, but if you'd rather skip them for any reason, feel free to jump ahead to this timecode. As he shared in a 2000 interview with Wired magazine, his mother was an eccentric flower power hippie who took a hands-off approach to parenting, and his father was estranged from the family for most of his life, save for a horrific incident on McGee's 13th birthday, where his dad drank himself into a stupor and proceeded to violently pummel him, only to drunkenly crash his pickup truck into a telephone pole afterwards. McGee was abandoned by his mother at age 16, and he never saw her again. So to say that he grew up as a super alienated child and teenager is a bit of an understatement. As he told Wired magazine,
I had a fucked up, weird-ass childhood, as you can imagine. It was like 1,000 episodes of Sally Jesse Raphael.
Let's take a call.
Hello, Sally.
Mr. Adams, please stop calling.
Mere months before Doom was released on an unsuspecting world, McGee found himself sweating it out as a VW mechanic for his uncle's garage in Northeast Texas. He had finally escaped his toxic home life and was making his way through early adulthood thanks to a series of unglamorous odd jobs. It was around this time in the early 90s that he met a new neighbor in his apartment complex, an unassuming and bespectacled young man named John Carmack. The two bonded over their shared love of high-performance automobiles, and Carmack quickly deduced that McGee would be a perfect fit for the team of iconoclastic punk game designers he had assembled at the still young studio id Software. And the rest, as they say, is history. American McGee started out as tech support and quickly rose up in the ranks, going on to contribute to level design and sound production work to Doom, Doom 2, Hexen, Quake and its expansion packs, Quake 2, and even the black sheep of the id family, Doom 64. So by 1997, well before he had even turned 30 years old, McGee had already established himself as one of the key architects of modern gaming. But the good times wouldn't last. As David Kushner recounted in his excellent book Masters of Doom, the original core team at id was plagued by infighting and saw several massive fallings out during and after the release of Quake 2. McGee was eventually fired from id over creative differences, but by 1999 he had landed a prime gig as creative director at Electronic Arts. And so, with newfound creative freedom and a budget to match, his thoughts turned to a passion project he'd been dreaming up for years. What if he took the impeccable shooter pedigree of the Doom Quake lineage and used that as the basis for a twisted fairy tales retelling of the legendary psychedelic Bildungsroman by Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland? The tale of Alice and her looking glass might seem like a strange choice for the Nine Inch Nails listening and Edward Scissorhand adoring McGee, who was known for his delightfully 90s mall goth punk dress code and demeanor. And besides, who would be interested in a video game based on classic literature?
I don't understand.
Anyway, what resulted from this strange fusion of influences wasn't just an excellent and hugely popular action puzzle shooter. It's also a near-perfect adaptation that is every bit as compelling as the original book. A loving tribute that even exceeds the source material in many respects. Or, to put it in a way that Lewis Carroll himself might appreciate, in this upside-down reality we inhabit, American McGee's Alice might be the closest we'll ever get to Wonderland. Alright, a quick interlude here because luckily we got a sponsor for this video, which is Honey. So let me take a minute to show you what Honey actually is and what they got in store for you. See, I don't know if it's the same for you, but I've quite a few times when I was about to buy something online, got to the checkout and noticed there was a promo code field. So I opened a new tab, started skimming the web for codes to save a few bucks, and it was always tedious, and it mostly didn't even work, and then eventually I just stopped bothering completely. And well, this is exactly what Honey does for you instead, in just a couple of seconds. It's a free online shopping tool that just sits there in the corner of your browser. That's all, really. You can just forget about it. Until the next time you're in the checkout of an online store, quite likely even one you've already been shopping at for ages. Honey suddenly pops up, says hello, and tells you, hey, I might have some coupons for you. And then checks all available listed coupons in their database to find one that applies to your cart and automatically enters the one that saves you the most money. Bam. I regularly keep having Honey pop up and produce me a promo code that saves me a good buck out of nowhere. It's just really neat, is all I can say. And it worked with all kinds of things. Video games, books, fitness equipment, even when ordering a pizza. That's actually a weird surprise, and I still don't know why it made me so happy at the time. So one last note I've been asked to mention. A recently added feature of Honey is that it lets you know if a site you're using is offering cashback. You just click activate cashback and well, your cashback straight into your PayPal account. It's pretty neat. As I said, you can add Honey for completely free without any registration to your browser. So hey, if you want to say, I want to try it out and support me, my channel, a bit in the process, then you should do it via joinhoney.com/ragnaroks, or simply follow the link I put in the description. Sweet, like Honey. So thanks a lot again to our sponsor and for your attention, and now I hope you enjoy the rest of the video. The original story of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland comes from fairly humble and mundane origins. As the legend goes, Lewis Carroll and a friend were entertaining a group of children during a picturesque boat ride up the River Thames, including the young daughter of a friend, one Alice Liddell. And it was amidst this golden afternoon that Carroll dreamed up a fantastical tale of an adventurous young girl named Alice. One day, while out playing along the riverbank, Alice finds herself tumbling into the fairy tale alternate reality of Wonderland, where talking anthropomorphic flora and fauna gamble about and the laws of reality function according to a kind of nonsense logic.
Let's sing about us.
We know one about the shy little violet.
Oh, no, not that old thing. Let's do Lovely Lily of the Valley. How about a Daisy
Oh, she wouldn't like
I
that.
want to sing Good.
The original Carroll novel was a story dreamed up for children during a bucolic afternoon boat ride. And this is certainly why popular depictions of Alice and Wonderland tend to skew towards the bright, colorful, and kiddie. So when most people think about Alice's Adventures in Wonderland these days, the image that first comes to mind is, without a doubt, the rainbow technicolor charm of the 1951 animated Disney film.
I was just wondering.
Oh, that's quite all right. One moment, please. Ooh.
But just like how there
No rules said the dog can't play basketball.
there's nothing about the original Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, or its sequel Through the Looking Glass, that demands the story of Alice be some kind of playful and rose-colored trip through a children's storybook. Read the books today and it's hard not to notice quite a few dark and disturbing plot beats. The original novels follow the surrealistic tale of a young girl who loses her memory after traveling down the rabbit hole, arriving in a strange land where logic is turned on its head, and mysterious or potentially hostile creatures wait around every corner. There's a constant sense that Alice is a stranger in a strange land, with how the locals relentlessly gawk at her and mock her appearance and behavior. More than once, an innocent bystander comes to a gruesome and senseless fate, like how the Fury sentences the mouse to death. And this coming mere pages before the Red Queen bellows her iconic demand, and right before Alice imbibes from that infamous drink me bottle, the novel confronts the reader with some extremely gruesome and disturbing imagery.
She had read several nice little histories about children who had got burnt and eaten up by wild beasts and other unpleasant things, all because they would not remember the simple rules their friends had taught them, such as that a red-hot poker will burn you if you hold it too long, and that if you cut your finger very deeply with a knife, it usually bleeds. And she had never forgotten that, if you drink much from a bottle marked poison, it is almost certain to disagree with you sooner or later. Chapter 1, Down the Rabbit Hole.
We could go on and on with examples, but the point stands. Our Disneyfied collective memory of Alice in Wonderland is totally incorrect. Which is right where American McGee's Alice comes in. The titular star of this game is about as different as can be from her depictions in popular media. This is a beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy version of both Alice and Wonderland itself, dripping with dark and edgy late 90s, early 2000s emo excess. The Alice of this story is no fair-haired maiden, but rather an alternate reality version of Wednesday Addams halfway through a glow-up, as if cardcaptor Sakura went full emo and traded her Mahou Shoujo uniform for threads from Hot Topic. So, while the gaming and mainstream press of the late 90s were utterly confounded by McGee's choice to create a dark and twisted sequel to the original Carol novels, McGee himself knew from a close reading of the source material that he was on pretty firm artistic footing. As he told Gamasutra in a 2001 interview,
"Really, turning Alice dark wasn't a result of me forcing that darkness in the story. It just seemed to come naturally out of Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass when I read it. It seems like a very dark story to me."
Our tale begins with our still young protagonist fast asleep, dreaming of her previous adventures. But her sweet reverie is abruptly shattered by the ethereal pleas of the White Rabbit, begging her to wake up and flee from her house. An accident caused by Alice's pet cat leads to a catastrophic house fire, razing it to the ground while Alice's mother and father are still trapped inside. Unable to rescue her parents from the inferno, our young protagonist descends into a spiral of shame, fear, depression, and self-hatred. We then fast forward a few years to find the orphaned Alice locked up in Rutledge Asylum, where she lives catatonic, unable to speak or otherwise respond to the world around her. But amidst the embers of her consciousness, the disembodied voice of the White Rabbit beckons her to Wonderland once more. And so Alice must return to her beloved childhood dreamscape and battle to uncover the source of the misery and madness that plagues her. And thus begins American McGee's Alice, which follows Alice on a classic Conradian descent into madness that eventually gets turned on its head. As the narrative unfolds, Alice comes to realize that in order to overcome her trauma, she must find the courage to confront and defeat her own nightmares. Now, if you play a lot of video games, you might be thinking that this plot doesn't sound like anything all that special. Stories about young women who deal with hidden trauma by facing and overcoming their inner demons have almost become a staple of game storytelling by now. But at the time this game came out, popular video game storytelling was still very much of the Doom Quake mold, especially when it came to action games. Bad guys appear, you pick up the boomstick, you blast them into giblets, rinse repeat. The idea of an action shooter doing a deep dive into a protagonist's interior emotions, and especially for that protagonist to be a young woman, was almost unheard of at the time. American McGee and the rest of the team who worked on Alice were far, far ahead of their contemporaries, including staples of psychological horror storytelling such as Silent Hill 2 and 3, and that really can't be emphasized enough. Alice is an incredibly brave and forward-thinking exploration of the potential of video game narrative, so much so that this version of Alice is still a deeply resonant and representative character for anyone who struggles under the weight of internal trauma, or for those who feel alienated from their social environment. This is no tale of a simpering damsel in distress, but an empowerment fantasy that sees Alice taking the fight to her inner demons.
Over my dead body!
I'll try to accommodate you.
The ultimate aim of her quest is also a confrontation with her trauma, her self-hatred, and her survivor's guilt. Emotions which are personified by that towering and bellowing antagonist, the Red Queen.
This realm is for grown-ups. Raw, well-ordered, ruthless, careening on the jagged edge of reality. Self-pitying dreamers are not wanted here. They cannot survive here.
And it's only by toppling this depraved monarch and her house of cards that you can unlock the key to not only Alice's sanity, but also the destiny of Wonderland itself.
Off with her.
For a game based on a work of literature, you might expect Alice to lean heavily on the story aspects of the experience at the expense of everything else. But the American McGee part of the game's title is just as critical as the Alice part. This game has as much in common with Doom as it does with Ravens and writing desks. American McGee's Alice isn't just an exercise in subverting a classic children's story, it's also very much a game. One that does a superb job of reflecting its id Software lineage, with a hybrid of puzzling, third-person shooting, and light 3D platforming. While the third-person perspective may be as different as the choice of protagonist or setting, Alice is still a lean and mean shooter thrill ride, just like its forebears. FPS veterans will find a lot to love about it, right down to that classic and compulsive gameplay loop. Careen your way through deadly environs and labyrinths, dodge fatal traps, collect keys and activate switches, and blast and slash your enemies to pieces. You can even see some of McGee's classic Doom design flourishes emerge here in Alice as well. Tease the player early on with a goal that can't be reached yet, so they'll savor the satisfaction even more when they finally arrive at their destination. And as the player puzzles, shoots, and leapfrogs their way through the game's increasingly challenging stages, they'll gather a delightfully macabre assortment of weapons with which to dispatch the Red Queen's armies. There are no standard shooter pistols, shotguns, machine guns, or chainsaws to be had here. Every tool in Alice's arsenal is a twisted take on a beloved plaything from a childhood toy box, with each possessing a unique primary and secondary fire mode. There is a deck of cards you can fling at enemies like homing missiles, a Crockett mallet that hurls explosive spears, a jack-in-the-box that can serve as either a throwable bomb or a flamethrower emplacement, and the creme de la creme, the Jabberwock's Eye Staff, which is a walking stick that basically functions as a high-powered railgun. Gone are the standard health and ammo counters, replaced here by shared pools for health and magic, for which enemies drop crystals that offer generous HP and MP recharges, and you're gonna need every single one of them. This game is quite a challenge just on the normal difficulty level already, and will put your shooter reflexes to the test even if you're a seasoned veteran. In other words, you're gonna die. A lot. And even if all of the game's literary pretensions don't do anything for you, American McGee's Alice is still at its core an absolutely enthralling puzzle shooter experience. The platforming and puzzles are well-realized challenges that provide just enough friction to be enjoyable. The signposting is across the board well done so that the player won't ever find herself stuck on a level after clearing out the enemies, frantically mashing the use key against the wall as they search for a switch or a hidden door. Not the Pool of Tears stage, though. Man, for real, screw the Pool of Tears. The bosses deserve a special mention as well here, with iconic characters from the Lewis Carroll novels serving as highly memorable roadblocks in your quest. Some of those encounters and sequences are so over the top, they'll remain fixed in your memory for years down the line. Those moments hold up so well, revisiting them might just make your head explode. American McGee's Alice is a rock-solid shooter thanks in no small parts to its development on the Quake 3 engine, which proved to be the game's trump card for its most important ambition: making an amazing and fantastical world come to life within the humble confines of your home computer back in 2000. This Danse Macabre interpretation of the world of Alice feels totally alien, an unreal and impossible place that should not exist. And yet, it's one that's at the same time enthralling, compelling, and an utter joy to wander and wonder your way through. Making the inconceivable believable is what games are best at. This magic intersection of art and science is exactly why games are such a powerful and unique medium. And like so many of the greatest of all time games, American McGee's Alice doesn't work so well despite it being a video game. It works so well exactly because it's a video game. Alice is a game that, despite selling millions of copies, rarely gets touted in the most influential or best-of lists for games of the late 90s and early 2000s. This omission is an absolute scandal. Considering the average computing power of a home PC during that time period, Alice is easily one of the best looking, best sounding, and most well presented games of its era. And because of its highly stylized aesthetic, it still holds up today. It may not have the flashy AI or razzmatazz gunplay of a game like Half-Life, but there's absolutely no denying that Alice's presentation can easily go toe-to-toe with anything Valve, id, or Epic released during this period. And that's thanks not just to the quality character models or the expert sound design, but also the absurd levels of attention to detail, the incomparable aesthetic flair littered with unbridled, over-the-top imagination are full on display here. And it's all in service to some of the absolute most surrealistic and twisted locations and set pieces you'll see this side of Silent Hill. You'll gaze up at an abyssal sky dotted with pentagrams where colossal books flap and glide through the starry night sky like stingrays. You behold a giant weeping statue of yourself, with your tears filling a nearby riverbed with a gushing torrent you must ride to freedom. You'll be transformed into a playing piece that must adhere to the iron laws of chess in order to advance across the board and seize the enemy's castle, and that's just the first few levels. In this grueling modern age of games as content, where it's compulsory to condense our entertainment into fat powdery lines to be snorted down till we're dope sick with overstimulation, Alice practically demands that you slow your roll, soak up the scenery, and ponder the imagery that is unraveled in front of you. Graphically, the game takes an impressionistic and broad strokes approach to rendering the rich and colorful environments of Alice's psyche. Objects and environs are sharply angular, with the level architecture tending to loom overhead, reinforcing the oppressive atmosphere. The game takes a decidedly subtle approach to its story, serving up its themes and cues as much through clever design flourishes and environmental storytelling as through direct exposition from the many inhabitants of Wonderland. And the soundtrack and sound design punch well above their weight class, drawing on industrial noise and ambient electronica to craft its iconic, moody acoustic backdrop. If the ninheads in attendance feel like they've detected a more than passing similarity to the band's early albums, they'd be 100% on point with that observation. For sound design, McGee recruited former Nine Inch Nails percussionist and Quake composer Chris Renna, whose sinister touch can be heard and felt in the game's many excellent uses of found sound. Whirring industrial machines, atonal piano keys, and the tick-tock of unseen clocks to provide a powerful backdrop to Alice's descent into madness. But all of this technical wizardry wouldn't mean nearly as much without the main attraction and star of the show, Alice herself. This game goes to great lengths to craft a surprisingly personal narrative for her, centered around self-discovery, actualization, and overcoming trauma. The journey begins with a few flashes of our protagonist's pre-Wonderland life and her eventual convalescence in Rutledge Asylum, where she lies catatonic and unresponsive, clutching her beloved stuffed bunny rabbit. And from this jumping-off point, the entirety of this tale transpires within a wonderland created by Alice's own mental landscape, and all of her attendant hopes, fears, and anxieties. Alice herself feels like a charming and true-to-character interpretation, thanks greatly to a stellar performance by voice actor Susie Brann, who brings just the right amount of high British haughtiness to the role.
Mushrooms, poppies, sugar and spice, all those things are very nice. When combined, the proper mixture makes a getting small elixir. I don't really like sweets.
This is a game that deals with some truly heavy mental health issues. Depression, anxiety, self-hatred, survivor's guilt. Any one of these topics would be difficult enough to deal with on their own in any medium, and yet Alice approaches them with far more sensitivity and respect than you might expect from a shooter made by one of the lead designers of Doom. Mental health is no cheap plot device here in service to some tropey madness takes its toll plot beat, but rather a well-considered part of the moment-to-moment gameplay and the broader narrative. Alice's mental health struggles are literalized as the enemies and obstacles she must face as she journeys through Wonderland. And victory demands not just a struggle against external adversity, but also the self-knowledge that, for those of us who grapple with our own mental health, We are always our own most vicious enemies, always the first to cut ourselves down, always the first to blame and criticize ourselves for our perceived failings.
You selfish, misbegotten, and unnatural child. You smelled the smoke, but you were in dreamland taking tea with your friends. You couldn't be bothered. Your room was protected and spared, while your family upstairs roasted in an inferno of incredible horror.
And the spiral into depression and anxiety can be unending, pulling us deeper and deeper down into ourselves until it touches the very core of our being, until we feel that there is no longer anything that differentiates us from our misery. The sense that our feelings of sadness, fear, and self-loathing are all we are and all we'll ever be.
Everyone I love dies violently. Unnaturally. I'm cursed. Why go on? I'll just hurt others.
At our lowest moments, this gives rise to the fear that these struggles have become so bound up in our perception of reality that the mere attempt to fight back would mean damaging some essential part of ourselves. This is the most terrible and pernicious trick of mental illness, which Alice illustrates so perfectly. It can grow so powerful that it comes to control your own inner narrative, until you lose the ability to imagine life without its dreadful presence. Your very existence as a person struggling with mental health defines both your interior and exterior realities.
Your pathetic attempts to reclaim your sanity have failed. Retreat to the sterile safety of your self-delusions, or risk inevitable annihilation. If you destroy me, you destroy yourself. Leave now, and some hollow part of you may survive. Stay, I will break you down. You will lose yourself forever!
But in its final moments, Alice does not suggest that some final climactic battle or feat of strength is the key to overcoming depression and anxiety. For those who suffer, all we can do is cultivate self-knowledge and work to make each day better than the one that came before it.
Do your best, Alice. You can only do your best. You can always do best.
All we can do is our best. We will try, we will fail, and we will fall down over and over again. You don't have to be perfect, nor do you have to have all the answers to life's many questions and uncertainties. You can only do your best, trying, failing, and iterating until you get to the next level, when the struggle begins anew. Save, load, repeat. Bad things happen in life. It's unavoidable. We may find ourselves at the mercy of forces that feel too powerful to overcome. Just as American McGee suffered horrible trauma early on in his life, the kind that leaves an indelible mark on the psyche. And while I'd never want to armchair psychoanalyze anyone on the basis of a video game or any work of art they produced, it's clear that there's more than just a little of McGee's own personal struggles and life story reflected in the tale of Alice. These moments of communion between Alice, the developers, and the player can be incredibly powerful if you're receptive to them. And for those of us who struggle with our own inner demons, Alice is a damn near cathartic experience to play through even today, 2 decades after it came out. This fact, more than the fun gameplay, even more so than the superb presentation, is exactly why American McGee's Alice remains such a beloved and enduring cult classic, and why it's a shame that it's so rarely listed as one of the most influential games of that era. American McGee's Alice was a smash success, selling a cool 1.5 million copies in the years following its release in late 2000. The game was popular enough that, nearly a decade later, Electronic Arts greenlit a sequel called Alice Madness Returns, which was also well received and sold decently. And hey, Madness Returns is a beautiful and fascinating game in its own right that might someday require me to explore it in video essay form. Just saying. But the true original American McGee's Alice is yet another classic game that has not even remotely been properly preserved and is in serious danger of becoming completely unavailable within the next few years. Madness Returns, the sequel, is at the moment available on PC via EA's Origin storefront, but there is no standalone version of the original American McGee's Alice available for purchase anywhere. And right now, anyone who wants to play the original Alice on PC must buy the complete edition of Madness Returns. That's available digitally via several online stores such as Humble Bundle, GameStop, Fanatical, and Green Man Gaming. Not on Origin anymore, they don't sell the complete edition. I've added a couple currently valid store links in the description. But oh yeah, you still need to use Origin with the codes from external sites to download and play the game, even though the complete edition can be purchased there. According to my research, another avenue to dig it up from the deepest hinter basement of the video game archives is if you have an EA Play subscription for either PS4, 5, or Xbox One/Series, because then you can download the original Alice listed under DLC for Madness Returns. Note, you have to have downloaded Madness Returns to get access to it, and this is not signposted anywhere in the EA Play catalog, so you can't find it by directly browsing or searching for it. So, although it's technically not completely abandoned, you have 3 guesses what my stance on gating access to classic video games behind a monthly subscription paywall like this is. Like, EA wondering why people pirate games, and then they make it impossible to get your hands on it without signing up to pay them every month for playing it when you feel like it, filed away and hidden where you'll only stumble upon it by pure chance or in a connoisseur's Reddit post or YouTube video on it is... This is a somewhat confusing and first and foremost highly unfortunate state of affairs of video game preservation once again, considering just how popular and historically important a game the original Alice is. Though there's never been official word from EA on exactly why the first game is still trapped in this copyrighto purgatorio, it's likely related to the same licensing hell that has kept McGee from moving forward on the long-awaited and much-anticipated third game in this series. McGee is also still very much active in this scene. He regularly posts about the game and shares concept art on his crowdfunding page, which he's using to drum up interest and concept art for a third Alice game. Please go check it out and support his crowdfunding. And so, if you're averse to hoisting the Jolly Roger and sailing the high seas, your only choice right now is to try and snap up one of the few remaining digital keys for the complete edition of Madness Returns before they're sold out for good. You'd better hurry too. EA clearly doesn't care about preserving this important piece of gaming history, so as usual, it's left up to us enthusiasts to pick up the slack. And make no mistake, American McGee's Alice is one of the most important titles to come out of this period of early 3D gaming. Countless players who might otherwise never have given the medium a second glance were suddenly drawn to games thanks to Alice and her dark and twisted take on the beloved childhood fable that resonated with so many.
You've gone quite mangy, Cat, but your grin's a comfort.
And you've picked up a bit of an attitude, still curious and willing to learn, I hope.
Alice, both the game and its protagonist, speaks to all of us, young and old, who isolate ourselves within imaginary worlds like video games in order to cope with the pain and trauma of the reality we inhabit. We turn to these digital simulacra, these dreams of the screen, to test just how far the horizons of our imaginations extend. And the most powerful and important games, like Alice, understand that this love of games is so much more than just puerile escapism. Games are integral to our quest for self-knowledge and self-discovery in this digital age. An extension of that same ancient quest to find our humanity reflected back at us, so that we may better comprehend the contours of our own existence. Your adventure through the looking glass begins and ends in the same place. A reflection of that paradoxical thing we call the self, your own greatest ally and your own fiercest enemy. Because no matter how broken or helpless you may feel, your life has more power and possibility than you realize. All it takes is a willingness to make that first plunge down the rabbit hole. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this little foray down the rabbit hole. Let me know if you'd like me to continue the journey onwards to Londerland sometime soon. I'd definitely love to do it, but it depends a bit on you guys and popular demand. But hey, I actually got a little bonbon that was lucky enough to set up for my viewers while we're on the topic of charismatic young girls escaping pernicious mental institutes through their mental wonderlands. I've approached GOG and the lovely indie developer studio Kill Monday Games and managed to get for you guys an awesome temporary discount on the narratively wonderfully fitting Fran Bow. It is one of my absolute favorite indie adventure games of all time, and I always felt that Fran could easily be an estranged cousin of McGee's Alice. The game is oozing with dark and sinister, hand-drawn gothic horror charm, and I think I've played through it easily 10 times or more by now. It's become an absolute comfort game for me. Not sure what that says about me, but I genuinely adore it. And if you've never played Fran Bow, I think you should not miss out on this one. And the cool part is, for the first 10 days within release of this video, you'll get this game for 80% off over on GOG.com if you use this promo code here, which you can also easily do by following the link down in the description. So, waste no time and find and save Mr. Midnight. I'm sure you won't regret it. And so, before I let you go, American McGee is not the only one whose current work is crowdfunded over on Patreon. It turns out that this channel here, mine, is as well. Most of you are aware by now that monthly donations by my patrons are the core financial backbone of my work, as well as the work of the people contributing to art, music, writing, copy editing, and captioning that go into these videos. So if you'd like to help me keep the lights on, know that your contribution goes a long way. Thank you so much for considering. And a special thank you this month goes out to these patrons: Agustin Ortega, Baruga Dono, Billy Lott, Boris Bügling, Casper Ram, Catherine Escobar, Christian, Christine Monaster, Chrissy, Chuck Taylor, Cordelia Crescendo, Corey Marr, Dana Rosa, David Zelenak, Dr. Haley Isabella Cawley, Dylan Labonte, Federico Rocha, Hippo Hobbly, Hunter Crawford and Margaret Strawn, Ian Rhodes, Isabella Stoner, Jin Hansen, Kenan Ward, Kerry George, Kevin H. Yang, Kyle Lee, Laird Wakala, Lillian B., Lawrence E. Buben, Matt Gretton, Max Macula, Morgan K., Mura Casardes, Nikot the Brave, Neil Snowden, Nineball 9606, Puka Princess, Raul Blanco, Refkins, Ronan Crom aka Daniel 242172, Samantha, Shannon Blue, Space Admiral Vivi, Starina Abramson, Tabby, Terraflops, Terry Collins, The Spiral Architect, Thomas Bona, Thwagam, Glebin, Giselle Almonte, and Uziel 1447. Until next time, ta-ta!